You know that feeling when you see someone on screen, and they just seem to have it all together? That beautiful smile, that confidence, that grace? Well, Andie MacDowell has been that person for millions of people around the world. But behind that gorgeous face and those unforgettable movie moments, there's a story that will absolutely break your heart. At 67 years old, Andie has been through things that most of us can't even imagine. And today, we're going to talk about the real Andie MacDowell, the woman behind the Hollywood glamour, and the tragedies that have shaped her life in ways are almost too painful to discuss. Before we dive into the heartbreaking parts of her story, let's talk about who Andie MacDowell really is. Born as Rosalie Anderson MacDowell in Gaffney, South Carolina, back in 1958, Andie didn't grow up in the spotlight. She was just a regular Southern girl with dreams like everyone else. Her childhood wasn't filled with red carpets and movie premieres. Instead, it was filled with challenges that would follow her for the rest of her life. Andie's early years were marked by something that no child should ever have to witness. Her mother struggled with alcoholism, and this wasn't just a small problem. It was a massive, life-altering issue that affected every single day of young Andie's life. Imagine being a little girl and not knowing what version of your mom you're going to get when you come home from school. Will she be happy? Will she be sad? Will she even remember your name? That uncertainty, that constant worry, that's what Andie lived with every single day. The pain of watching her mother battle addiction left scars on Andie's heart that would never fully heal. She's talked about how confusing it was as a child, how she loved her mother so deeply but also felt this overwhelming sense of helplessness. There was nothing she could do to fix the problem, nothing she could say to make it better. And for a child, that feeling of powerlessness is absolutely devastating. But the tragedy with her mother didn't end with just the alcoholism. When Andie was just 23 years old, barely starting her adult life and her modeling career, her mother passed away. Can you imagine that? Just when you're beginning to find your own way in the world, just when you're starting to become the person you're meant to be, you lose the woman who gave you life. The woman who, despite all her struggles and all her demons, was still your mother. That kind of loss at such a young age changes you forever. Andie has spoken about how her mother's death affected her in ways she didn't even understand at the time. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't just hit you all at once and then go away. It comes in waves, sometimes years later, when you least expect it. And for Andie, that grief mixed with all the complicated feelings she had about her mother's addiction created an emotional storm that she's still processing even today. Now, you might think that after dealing with such a difficult childhood, Andie's adult life would be smooth sailing. She became a successful model, walking runways and appearing in major campaigns. She transitioned into acting and landed roles in some of the most beloved movies of the 1980s and 1990s. She starred in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Groundhog Day, and 4 Weddings and a Funeral. She was living the dream, right? Wrong. Let's talk about her love life, because this is where things get really heartbreaking. Andie married Paul Qualley, a fellow model, back in 1986. They seemed perfect together. They had 3 children, 3 beautiful kids who became Andie's whole world. Their names are Justin, Rainey, and Sarah Margaret, and Andie has always said that becoming a mother was the most important thing she ever did. She poured every ounce of love and dedication into those kids, determined to give them the stable, loving childhood that she never had. But in 1999, after 13 years of marriage, Andie and Paul divorced. Divorce is never easy, especially when children are involved. Andie had to navigate the pain of a broken marriage while also trying to protect her kids and keep their lives as normal as possible. She's talked about how guilty she felt, how she worried constantly about whether divorce would damage her children the way her mother's alcoholism had damaged her. That fear of repeating the cycle, of somehow failing her kids the way she felt failed as a child, it haunted her. After her divorce from Paul, Andie tried to find love again. And she did, or at least she thought she did. She got married again in 2001 to a businessman named Rhett Hartzog. This was supposed to be her fresh start, her second chance at happiness. But sometimes life has other plans. The marriage lasted less than 3 years. By 2004, Andie was divorced again. 2 failed marriages. 2 times she thought she found her forever person, and 2 times it fell apart. Think about that for a second. Here's a woman who the whole world sees as beautiful and successful, a woman who seems to have everything, and yet she can't make a marriage work. The loneliness that must come with that, the feeling that maybe there's something wrong with you, maybe you're somehow broken or unlovable, that's a kind of pain that eats away at your soul. But Andie's tragedies weren't just limited to her personal relationships. Let's talk about Hollywood and how this industry treated her, especially as she got older. Andie MacDowell became famous partly because of her incredible beauty. Those eyes, that smile, that lustrous dark hair. She was stunning, and Hollywood loved her for it. But here's the cruel truth about Hollywood. It loves you for your beauty, and then it punishes you when that beauty starts to change. As Andie got older, as she naturally aged like every human being does, the roles started drying up. Directors stopped calling. Producers stopped being interested. Why? Because she was no longer the young, fresh-faced ingenue. She was a mature woman, and Hollywood has never been kind to mature women. While her male co-stars continued to play romantic leads well into their 60s and 70s, Andie found herself being pushed aside, deemed too old, no longer relevant. The pain of being made to feel invisible, of having your worth tied so completely to your appearance, that's something Andie has struggled with deeply. She's talked about how difficult it was to look in the mirror and see the lines on her face, not because she thought they made her ugly, but because she knew what they meant in Hollywood. They meant fewer opportunities. They meant less value. They meant being forgotten. And here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. Andie made a decision that took enormous courage. She decided to embrace her gray hair. She decided to stop dyeing it, to stop trying to look younger than she was, and to just be herself. And you know what happened? She faced massive criticism. People said she looked old. People said she'd let herself go. People said she was making a mistake. Can you imagine? After years of being told your appearance is everything, you finally decide to be authentic, and the world punishes you for it. But Andie stood her ground. She kept her gray hair. She spoke out about ageism in Hollywood. She became an advocate for women being allowed to age naturally without shame. It was brave and it was necessary, but it also came at a cost. The roles didn't come back. The industry didn't suddenly embrace her for her courage. Instead, she had to watch as younger actresses took the part she might have played, and she had to make peace with the fact that her career, at least in the traditional Hollywood sense, was essentially over. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked when we're discussing Andie's life, the pressure of being a public figure while dealing with private pain. Every time Andie went through something difficult, whether it was a mother's death, her divorces, or her struggles with Hollywood ageism, she had to do it in the public eye. She couldn't just grieve privately. She couldn't just process her pain in peace. Instead, tabloids wrote stories about her. Photographers followed her. People she'd never met felt entitled to comment on her life, her choices, her appearance. That lack of privacy, that constant scrutiny, it adds another layer of trauma to everything else she was dealing with. Imagine trying to heal from a divorce while magazines speculate about what went wrong. Imagine trying to build your self-esteem while strangers on the internet criticize how you look. It's exhausting and it's damaging, and Andie has had to endure it for decades. There's also the financial pressure that people don't often talk about. Yes, Andie was a successful actress, but she also had 3 children to raise, largely on her own after her divorce from Paul. She had households to maintain, college tuition to pay, and all the normal expenses of life, except her income was dependent on an industry that was actively pushing her out. The stress of wondering if you'll be able to provide for your children, of worrying about your future when work is drying up, that's a very real tragedy that many people, even successful people, face. But through all of this pain, all of these challenges and heartbreaks, Andie found strength in her children. She's talked about how Justin, Rainey, and Sarah became her reason for keeping going. When everything else fell apart, when Hollywood rejected her and marriages failed and the grief of her past threatened to overwhelm her, she looked at her kids and found purpose. She determined that no matter what happened to her, she would break the cycle of pain that had started with her own mother. And in many ways, she succeeded. Her children have grown up to be talented, grounded individuals. Rainey and Margaret both followed their mother into the entertainment industry, and Andie has supported them every step of the way. She's been the kind of mother to them that she wished she could have had, present, supportive, sober, and stable. That's not just an accomplishment. It's a triumph over generational trauma. But even that victory came with its own bittersweet moments. Watching her daughters enter the same industry that chewed her up and spit her out, Andie must have felt a complex mix of pride and fear. She knows what Hollywood can do to women. She knows the pressure, the criticism, the way the industry tries to make you feel like you're never quite enough. And now her daughters are navigating those same treacherous waters. At 67, Andie MacDowell is still here, still standing, still fighting. But the toll of her life's tragedies is visible if you look closely enough. In interviews, you can sometimes see a sadness in her eyes, a weight that she carries. She speaks eloquently about her experiences, about aging and loss and the challenges she's faced, but there's always an undercurrent of pain. Some wounds never fully heal. They just become part of who you are. The tragedy of Andie MacDowell isn't just one thing. It's not just her mother's alcoholism and death. It's not just her failed marriages. It's not just Hollywood's ageism or the constant public scrutiny. It's all of these things combined, layered one on top of the other, creating a lifetime of heartbreak that would have broken many people completely. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that Andie represents so many women who face similar struggles. How many women grow up in homes affected by addiction? How many women struggle through painful divorces? How many women are made to feel worthless as they age? How many women have to choose between being authentic and being accepted? Andie's story is tragic, but it's also universal. Her pain is personal, but it reflects the pain of millions. And yet, here's what's remarkable about Andie MacDowell. She's never given up. She's never retreated from public life completely. She's never stopped advocating for what she believes in. Even when Hollywood turned it back on her, she found other ways to work, other ways to express herself. She's done smaller films, independent projects, and television work. She's used her platform to speak about important issues, particularly ageism and the pressure women face to conform to impossible beauty standards. Andie has also been open about her struggles with her mental health. She's talked about dealing with anxiety and depression, about the challenge of maintaining your emotional well-being when your life has been marked by so much loss and disappointment. That openness, that willingness to be vulnerable, it's helped countless other people feel less alone in their own struggles. But it also reveals just how much Andie has had to fight, not just against external circumstances, but against her own internal demons. The loneliness is perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of Andie's story. After 2 divorces, she's been single for many years now. She's spoken about how difficult it is to find genuine connection, especially as an older woman in the public eye. She's talked about wanting companionship, wanting love, but also being cautious, being afraid of getting hurt again. That combination of longing and fear, it's a kind of prison that keeps so many people isolated. And there's the ongoing grief for her mother. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Sometimes it just teaches you how to live with them. Andie has said that she still thinks about her mother regularly, still wonders what their relationship might have been like if addiction hadn't stolen so much from them. She's had to make peace with never getting the closure she deserved, never getting the chance to have an adult relationship with a sober, healthy mother. As we look at Andie MacDowell's life, at everything she's endured and everything she's lost, it's almost overwhelming. This is a woman who deserved so much better than what life gave her. She deserved a stable childhood. She deserved a mother who could be present and healthy. She deserved marriages that lasted. She deserved an industry that valued her talent and humanity beyond her appearance. She deserved to age without being made to feel ashamed or invisible. But life doesn't give us what we deserve. It gives us what it gives us, and we have to find a way to survive it, to make meaning from it, to keep going even when every part of us wants to give up. And that's what Andie MacDowell has done. She's survived. She's kept going. She's raised her children and pursued her passions and spoken her truth, even when it cost her opportunities. The tragedy of Andie MacDowell is that such a beautiful, talented, kind-hearted woman has had to endure so much pain. But perhaps the real story isn't just a tragedy. Perhaps it's also the resilience. Perhaps it's the strength it takes to wake up every day after everything she's been through and choose to keep living, keep trying, keep hoping. That's not just sad, it's also incredibly inspiring. So the next time you see Andie MacDowell on screen or in a photo, remember that you're not just looking at a former Hollywood star. You're looking at a survivor. You're looking at a woman who has been broken and hurt and disappointed more times than most of us could handle, and who has somehow found the strength to keep standing. Her gray hair isn't a sign that she's given up. It's a symbol of everything she's overcome. Every line on her face tells a story of pain endured and battles fought. At 67, Andie MacDowell's tragedy is beyond heartbreaking, but her courage, her resilience, her refusal to be crushed by the weight of it all, that's beyond inspiring. She reminds us that even when life takes everything from you, even when you lose your mother too soon and your marriages fail and your career fades and the world tries to make you invisible, you can still choose to be seen. You can still choose to matter. You can still choose to keep going. And maybe that's the most important lesson from Andie's life. It's not that tragedy can be avoided, because it can't. It's not that pain won't find us, because it will. It's that even in the midst of heartbreak, even when everything feels hopeless, we have a choice. We can let the tragedy define us, or we can define ourselves in spite of it. Andie MacDowell has chosen the latter, and that makes her not just a tragic figure, but a hero. If this story touched your heart, if you feel differently about Andie MacDowell now than you did before, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story about resilience and survival. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about the real lives behind the Hollywood glamour. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. What do you think about Andie's journey? What lessons can we learn from her story? Thank you so much for watching, and remember, everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Be kind, be compassionate, and never judge someone's life by what you see on the surface.